I have never been a man who said things before I knew how to say them right. My father was the same way. He would think on something for a week before he mentioned it, and by the time he did, there was nothing left to argue with because he had already thought of every objection. I have that habit. It is not always a useful one. In the case of Vera Cade, I held what I wanted to say for 9 months before I said it, and I do not think I can honestly call that a good decision, though it is the one I made. I will tell you how I came to know her. She arrived in Bellford in February of 1886 on the morning stage. I was at the livery when she came in. Not for any particular reason, I had a harness repair to pick up, and Bellford's morning stage came in at the livery end of the street. She came down off the stage in a dark wool coat that had been good once, and a plain hat, and she stood in the street for a moment, taking the measure of the town. I noticed her the way you notice someone who is not panicking when they probably could be. There was something in the way she stood that was composed without being cheerful about it, which is a particular kind of composure I have always respected. She had come to Bellford to take the schoolhouse position. The previous teacher had left in January, personal reasons, which in Bellford in 1886 generally meant she had married someone, and the county board had filled the position with Vera Cade, late of Decatur, Illinois, 31 years old, references from 2 schools, and a letter from the Methodist Church. I know this because Bellford was a small enough town that this sort of information moved through the air like weather, and within 3 days of her arrival, I knew her name, her origin, and the fact that she had come west after a situation had resolved itself, which was how May Alderley put it when she relayed it to me over the fence in the way that May Alderley relayed most of the town's business. The situation, as I understood it over time, was that she had been engaged in Decatur to a man named Harford who had taken a position in Chicago and suggested that the wedding might be indefinitely postponed in order to allow him to establish himself, and that this postponement had lasted 18 months, at which point Vera Cade had written to him that she considered the matter settled and accepted the Bellford position. The polite version of this, which May Alderley used, was that a situation had resolved itself. The more accurate version, which I put together from various pieces of information, was that she had been waiting for a man to decide she was worth deciding about, and she had eventually decided for him. I am telling you this because it is the context for why she was in Bellford, and because I did not fully understand it until much later. I met her formally in March, when the County Roads Committee had a meeting at the schoolhouse about the North Road drainage issue, and she was there because the North Road ran past the school, and she had a legitimate complaint about the state of it. She sat at the end of the third bench with a notebook, and she made notes during the committee arguments, and when she spoke she was precise and did not repeat herself. The committee agreed to survey the north drainage by April, which was about twice the speed at which the County Roads Committee usually agreed to anything, and I believe she had something to do with that. I introduced myself after the meeting. She was gathering her papers. I told her I was on the north spread, 3 miles out, that I had a legitimate interest in the drainage question as well, and that I thought she had run the committee better than the committee had. She looked at me with the look she had, level and not unfriendly, but not particularly concerned with social performance. "Thank you," she said. "I just asked the question twice until someone answered it." I said that was a skill not everyone had. She said, "It's mostly patience," and went back to her papers. I thought about that conversation for the rest of the month, which is the kind of thing I do. In April, I had occasion to drop materials at the schoolhouse for the road drainage project, and we talked for about 12 minutes about the drainage specifications, and she asked 2 questions that indicated she had read the survey report, which I had not expected. In May, I lent her a county land survey from 1878 that she had mentioned needing for a geography lesson, and she returned it in June with a note that said only, "Thank you, this was useful. The children now know where the Talbot Valley is." I kept the note. I am not going to explain why. It was a plain, polite note from a school teacher about a land survey, but I kept it. Through the summer of 1886, I found occasion to speak with her perhaps 8 or 9 times, all of them legitimate. The road committee met 3 more times. There was a county fair in July where we talked for 20 minutes about the irrigation question in the lower valley while everyone around us was looking at prize pigs and eating cornbread. There was a supply trip to the hardware store in August, where I helped her carry 2 boxes of school supplies to the schoolhouse because I was going in that direction and the boxes were unwieldy. She was always direct and even and present in the conversation. She was not warm in the way some people perform warmth. She was honest and interested, and when she disagreed with something you said, she said so, plainly, and gave the reason, which I found more comfortable than the alternative. She never asked me about myself in the way people do when they are being polite. She asked me about the things I knew, the land and the water and the road, and she paid attention to what I said. By August, I knew that I wanted to say something to her, and I also knew I did not know how to say it right, so I did not say it. In September, the school term started, and she was busier, and I saw her less. In October, I saw her once at the Alderley store, and we talked about the North Final Survey report for about 8 minutes. In November, I cut my right hand on a fence wire badly enough that May Alderley, who was the nearest thing Bellford had to a medical opinion, told me to keep it wrapped and not use it for 2 weeks. 2 weeks was a long time to not use a hand. I found myself sitting with more time to think than I was accustomed to, which was when I came to the conclusion that 9 months was long enough to be thinking about how to say something, and that the reason I had not said it was not that I did not know how, but that I was afraid of the answer, and that being afraid of the answer was not a sufficient reason to leave the question unsaid. I went to the schoolhouse on a Friday, after the children had gone. She was at the front of the room cleaning the chalkboard. She heard me come in and turned around. "Mr. Harnell," she said, "is this about the road?" I said it was not about the road. She waited. She was good at waiting. I told her I had been thinking about how to say something clearly for 9 months, and I was going to say it now. That I had found her to be the most interesting person I had talked to since I came to Bellford 6 years ago. That I did not mean interesting in the vague way people use that word. I meant that every conversation I had with her was worth more of my attention than most other things, and that I was aware of this and had been for a long time. I told her that I was not a man who said things until he knew how to say them, and that the reason I was saying this now was that 9 months seemed like enough time to have worked it out. She looked at me with that even look. I said I was not asking her to decide anything. I was telling her what I had been thinking so that she had the information. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Harford made me wait 18 months and then decided I wasn't worth deciding about." I said I had heard something to that effect. She looked at me carefully. "You're not asking." I said I was not asking. I was telling her a fact. She was quiet again. Then she said, "I'll need to think about it." I said that was entirely reasonable. "I don't like waiting," she said. I told her that was also reasonable. She turned back to the chalkboard and said, "Come to supper on Tuesday. I'll have thought about it by then." I said I would be there. I went to supper on Tuesday. She had thought about it. We talked for 3 hours about the valley and the school, and what we each intended, and what we did not intend. She asked me 3 direct questions that I answered as directly as I could. At the end of the evening, she said she did not see any reason to wait any longer than was practical, and asked how long I needed to put my affairs in order. I told her I had put them in order in September. She looked at me. Then she said, 9 months is a long time, Harnell." I said I was aware of that. She said, "Don't do it again." I told her I would not. We were married in January of 1887. It was a plain ceremony at the courthouse, which was what she wanted, and I agreed with her. Afterward, she said, "You told me a fact, and I appreciated that. Most people ask when they should just say the thing." I told her I had only known it was the right thing to do in November. She said, "I know. I was watching you work it out since August." I did not have anything useful to say to that. She patted my arm once, the way she did when she considered the matter settled. It was settled.